皆さんこんにちは。Welcome back to my channel. Does your Japanese sound choppy when you speak? It might be because you don't know how to connect sentences naturally. Don't worry. Today, we are diving into one of the most essential elements of fluent Japanese, how to say and in Japanese. By the end of this video, you will be able to seamlessly connect your thoughts just like a native speaker. Are you ready? Let's get started. In Japanese, there are many ways to connect words, phrases, and sentences using and, depending on the context. Let's explore each one with examples to make it easy to understand. The simplest way to say and is by using to connect specific items in a list. For example, お寿司とラーメンが好き。お寿司とラーメンが好き。In this sentence, と is used to list items one by one. You can also use と when you're talking about doing something with someone. For example, 友達とご飯に行きました。友達とご飯に行きました。In this sentence, と shows the relationship between you and your friend dining together. Similar to と、に is also used when listing specific items. However, we often use に when we are recalling something or still thinking about what to list. For example, at restaurant. とりあえず生ビール2つに、ウーロン茶1つ。あと枝豆もお願いします。とりあえず生ビール2つにウーロン茶1つ。あと枝豆もお願いします。For this sentence, に is used as you list items you want while thinking about the items. When you want to give examples but not list everything, use や instead of と. This shows that there are more items, but you are only mentioning a few. For example, 京都には清水寺や金閣寺、東寺など有名なお寺があります。京都には清水寺や金閣寺、東寺など有名なお寺があります。Here, や gives the expression that there are many famous temples in Kyoto, not just the ones mentioned. The word など reinforces this idea by meaning, etc. When you want to add extra details or item in the conversation, use それから、それと、and それに。Let's break them down. それから is used to indicate a sequence of events. For example, 家の掃除をして、それから買い物に行きます。家の掃除をして、それから買い物に行きます。This sentence first mentions the action of cleaning, and then as the next action will be going shopping, showing the order of events. それと is used to add an extra items or idea at the end, similar to also in English. For example, 日本旅行では東京と大阪と京都、それと沖縄にも行ったよ。日本旅行では東京と大阪と京都、それと沖縄にも行ったよ。 それに is used to add an extra item, similar to as well in English. For example, カフェラテ2つにチョコレートケーキ1つ。それにモンブランも1つお願いします。カフェラテ2つにチョコレートケーキ1つ。それにモンブランも1つお願いします。When listing actions or event, especially when describing a mix of things you did, you can use blah blah tari. This form is used to give examples of activity without mentioning everything. You can use the past tense of verb such as 見た or 言った and add ri at the end. For example, 週末は映画を見たり、ジムに行ったりしていました。週末は映画を見たり、ジムに行ったりしていました。This sentence lists some weekend activities, but implies there are more activities not mentioned. When explaining reasons or describing multiple qualities, we use blah blah shi or blah blah dashi. Both are used to connect reasons or qualities together in a sentence. Here's how to use them. For verbs and i adjectives like いい、おいしい, just add し at the end. For example, このレストラン雰囲気いいし、料理もおいしいし、値段も安いよ。このレストラン雰囲気いいし、料理もおいしいし、値段も安いよ。Here, she is used to connect reasons or qualities together. And mo is similar to also or to in English. For na adjectives, such as 抜群な、美人な and nouns, add だし at the end. For example, 稽古はスタイル抜群だし、美人だし、頭もいいから羨ましい。稽古はスタイル抜群だし、美人だし、頭もいいから羨ましい。When describing things in detail, add て、で、and くて to make your sentence flow more naturally. For verbs like 走る, simply change it to the て form. If you are not familiar with て form, be sure to check out my video where I explaining it in detail. 走って駅に向かいました。走って駅に向かいました。For i adjectives like 暑い, drop i and add くて. For example, 日本の夏は暑くてジメジメする。日本の夏は暑くてジメジメする。For na adjectives like 新鮮な, drop な and add で. For example, この寿司屋さん、ネタが新鮮で美味しかった。この寿司屋さん、ネタが新鮮で美味しかった。You've probably heard the phrase blah blah だけど or blah blah ですけど. These phrases usually mean but. However, they can also act as and to naturally connect your idea in conversation. you can use the dictionary form of verb like 見る、行く or the past tense of verbs 見た、行った and add んだけど or んですけど at the end. For example, 昨日この映画見たんだけどすごく面白かったよ。昨日この映画見たんだけど、すごく面白かったよ。このお店よく行くんですけど、品揃えすごくいいですよ。このお店よく行くんですけど、品揃えすごくいいですよ。That's it for today's lesson. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for the next videos. I love to hear your thoughts. Please leave a comment down below and let me know what would you like to see in my future videos. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for upcoming video. ではまた。